Say a prayer for the youth of America. God bless our youth, America.
During the early and mid-1990s, Generation Xers had basically checked out on horror and slasher films. Most were direct-to-video releases, direct-to-VHS tapes, that is. It took a meta-analytical film like Scream to break the doldrums. Scream, released in 1996, is a keep-em-guessing whodunit thriller that lacks the supernaturalistic elements of its primary predecessor, Halloween. Scream is packed with characters with realistic lives and motives for their time. Randy, much like Dr. Loomis in Halloween, provides authorial or directorial voice in the film in order to explain events that are taking place. The film never actually explores motives a la Halloween, the one thing John Carpenter avoided. The first thing we hear once the film begins is the piercing noise of a phone ringing. As the biggest name actress in the film at the time, I remember how surprised everyone was when Drew Barrymore's character was killed so early. This upped the ante and proved to the audience that the stakes would be real. With each subsequent recurrence of the phone ringing, the audience is kept ill at ease. This also is a callback reference to previous horror films where a killer makes ominous phone calls, sometimes even within the same house. The film includes other visual callbacks, such as the boyfriend Billy Loomis, yes, an in-film reference to Halloween's Dr. Sam Loomis, as he enters through the girlfriend's upstairs window, just as Johnny Depp had done in Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street. The opening of the film directly references these films, and the rest of the film is peppered with similar homages to previous great horror films. Unlike Halloween, however, Scream depicts the victims and perpetrators not as run-of-the-mill middle-class types, but as more affluent upper-middle-class types with parents who are sometimes divorcees or separated for whatever reason. Similar to Halloween, Scream has the stark danger posed by the killer on full display within the first minutes of screen time, which differ greatly in the original screenplay by Kevin Williamson. Scream also has a longer running time than Halloween, but like Halloween, spawned numerous sequel spin-offs, a TV series, copycats, and the ridiculous Scary Movie franchise, which incidentally was the original name of Scream. Scream also has constant visual references to film tropes, video rental stores, Halloween playing at the party at the end of the film, and many, many more besides. The final girl was portrayed by the ever-so-cute Neve Campbell as Sidney Prescott. Previously, she had been in The Craft and Party of Five. She was able to bring the necessary innocence and vulnerability that would be overturned by the end of the film. The film continually sets up scenes with vibrant colors but primarily contrasts whites, blacks, and reds, and it often takes pristine, antiseptic environments and then coats them in blood. While the film's musical score never quite attains iconic status like Carpenter's Halloween, it nevertheless had a series of powerful selections that have stood the test of time. Scream, in keeping with the times, is considerably more gory than Halloween. In terms of casting, Scream brought in Linda Blair of The Exorcist for an Easter egg appearance. The soon-to-be megastar and Alabama native Courtney Cox as the older, more aggressive and beautiful TV reporter Gail Weathers, and it introduced a series of other rising stars: David Arquette, Skeet Ulrich, Rose McGowan, Matthew Lillard, Jamie Kennedy, and Liev Schreiber as the imposing accused killer Cotton Weary, along with the Fonz himself, Henry Winkler, in his kinder, gentler years. Scream's meta-referencing approach was at the time brand new. It was a kind of self-awareness never before put on film. For example, the faux tough guy approach put on by the rather silly David Arquette is aptly named Dewey, which makes the audience think of a kind of Barney Fife-level cop, but who ends up being more important and tougher than anyone imagined by the end of the film. This variety of elements also gives Scream a very high rewatch value. It isn't simply a one and done. This resulted in an incredible box office take of nearly $200 million on a small budget of about $15 million. Even today, no Halloween goes by without one of the most popular masks and costumes being that of Ghostface, which is typically found alongside that of Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, and Freddy Krueger. In the film, we find out that Sidney's mom was the victim of a brutal murder about 1 year prior to the events of the film. Once Casey and her boyfriend are killed in a similarly gruesome fashion, Sidney is hit hard and terrified. Scream brilliantly blends two psychological and philosophical elements common to Generation Xers during that time: cynicism and nihilism. By deploying a deconstructive approach to the standard slasher narrative techniques, audiences were treated to a subversive and skeptical depiction. Writer Kevin Williamson famously locked himself away for a time in order to work on Scream. Williamson is admittedly a huge fan of Halloween and wrote while he listened to the Halloween soundtrack repeatedly. Williamson was also inspired by news reports of the Gainesville Ripper case. In turn, this aspect would play into the sadism of Ghostface and the visceral brutality of his kills. Director Wes Craven, a master of the horror genre, was able to imbue the characters with a kind of ironic distance in the film from the murders that constantly alternates between terror and dark humor. Despite this playfulness, Scream is a very intense movie that went on to garner strong reviews back when that actually meant something, brought in numerous awards, and a high rating on IMDb. The film also seems to be underpinned by a rage that Halloween lacked. This rage was part and parcel to a desensitized generation bombarded with images of war, death, riots, and pop psychology. Along the way, Scream points the finger at no less than 5 potential suspects, and, interestingly, Jamie Lee Curtis is referenced and called the Scream Queen. During the third act, we also see the reappearance of a TV blue screen typical of those where one may be using a VCR as seen in the initial act of the film. The film rarely suggests more than one killer, which makes the reveal thoroughly surprising. The accomplishments of Scream are numerous and have landed it iconic status alongside with the all-time greats. Although Scream has a low kill count, I think that actually contributes to the success of the film. Scream surpasses Halloween with 8 murders. One of those is never seen on film and is only the subject of discussion. However, there are numerous others who suffer a variety of injuries, from being stabbed to being shot, but are able to survive. Finally, Scream probably has more other film references than any other horror film that I've ever seen. It is packed with homages to Are You in the House Alone from 1978, to other previous horror films such as The Evil Dead, I Spit on Your Grave, Hellraiser, Friday the 13th, of course Halloween, A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Howling, Prom Night, Black Christmas, When a Stranger Calls, Psycho.
It's not as if she were a maniac, a raving thing. She just goes a little mad sometimes. We all go a little mad sometimes. Haven't you?
Help me. Stu's flipped out. He's gone mad.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
The Fog, Terror Train, The Town That Dreaded Sundown, The Exorcist, Carrie, and Silence of the Lambs. With its combination of realistic dialogue and visceral violence, Scream was able to touch a generation and have success that has lasted for more than 20 years. Its legendary status among the all-time greats has been solidified.